not going beyond that.
Yeah.
So I hit here, the beginning.
The one that had all the units, Liz, that we could, the hyperlinks. It was a page up there earlier that we just randomly clicked on this one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just have to back on
Just go to about the standards, I think, maybe.
It could be, yeah.
It's the tab bar.
This one?
Scroll back now.
Yeah, you can go by
The next generation science,
topic arrangements.
Yeah, if you hit topic
Yeah,
arrangements,
there you go.
it'll give you a PDF on the next link. That's how I got to it. The one in the middle.
There you go, right there.
There you go.
I just had to stop the video.
Oh, okay. And if you scroll down. Well, we're supposed to be starting at 6:30, so.
Okay. Why don't you scroll all the way? Scroll more. Yeah, right there. There's your topics.
No, you can't.
I'm gonna stop.
storyline, elementary K-5.
10 for physical science for middle school, no, 5 for middle school. Physical science, 5 for high school. Physical science, 5 for life science.
6 to 8.
Both 10.
Can you hit Control plus?
Yeah.
Hit 2.
Control and 1 plus.
That would be an F function.
Control plus will make the screen larger, Control minus makes it.
The tab.
Technology kind of helps there. Technology makes
They want to go back home. All right, so everyone sees middle school 6 through 8 storyline,
registered trademark.
and you have 2, 4, 5 topics.
Those would be like your units.
Is there an additional one anyone wants to think about that should be added for middle school in terms of the physical sciences? Then life sciences, there are 5. Structure, function, and information processing, matter and energy, independent relationships and ecosystems, growth, development, and reproduction of organisms, natural selection and adaptation. Then at middle school, there's earth and space sciences. And there are 5 of those. Now, to the right, yes, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I was having a conversation with Chris. What exactly are we looking at right now?
Just the topics.
Topics.
Just the topics?
Units.
Okay.
Just the topics.
All right, I just wanted to, not necessarily picking me out right now that we want to look at just right away, just kind of.
I think that's
Get a feel.
Okay, thank you.
Getting a feel for scope and sequence, what are the big areas?
Those are terms I know. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you scroll,
I'm on board.
If you scroll a little more down, there's an engineering, the engineering technology, there's
Oh, that's a good point.
engineering.
Yeah, that's the
So
STEM.
that's meant to
That's
go on
the
every
STEM
one.
class.
Yes, this is, that's the last one.
So really there's 6.
Yeah, I was a little, that's, the engineering is written as part of, the practices, and then they went through and put those standards in and performance expectations. But quite frankly, when you look at them, they kind of stick out like a sore thumb. Just, if you look at them just as a piece, but when you go through and look at the individual performance expectations, you'll go, oh, okay, I see how this kind of fits together a little bit better.
So are there just four main categories? Is that?
For middle school and high school.
Physical sciences,
The disciplines like life science, physical science.
life science, earth and space sciences, and engineering, technology, and application.
Where it says physical science, you gotta think chemistry and physics.
And biology takes them under life sciences.
Is there any further discussion of that before we take a look at the high school to the right? Parallel construction, teachers. Right?
It's almost the same, they just go more in depth.
Yeah.
I think there's an addition within there.
And we're not
Yes,
looking
yeah.
at the sub things, the things in red, right? We're just looking at in the big gray boxes.
We're now into the red because we saw the congruency of the topics, the big topical areas, 6 through 8 and 9 through 12. And they are similar. If you look at the first one, which is physical sciences, you look at both of them, they're identical in terms of topical areas. For high school and for middle school, structure and properties of matter, structure and properties of matter. Of course, the content can be different. But if you go down until you get to life sciences, you'll see the third one, not the third one, the fourth one is different. In middle school, it's growth, development, and reproduction of organisms, but in high school, it's inheritance and variation of traits.
But those dovetail together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, those are,
they just name them differently.
they
So
go
where
in
does like human anatomy and stuff like that fall?
Your eye, color of your eye, I would think. That might be hereditary.
Okay.
But sometimes when you read these performance expectations, you gotta realize that, you know, like we talked about 2 days for this and 3 days for that. When you read some of these performance expectations, you gotta realize there's a whole lot of topics that go into teaching that one thing, so.
That are in the box below.
That are in the box below, yes. So you can't, you kind of have to take these standards as a whole type situation and make sure you read all the pieces to them, because if not, you may make the assumption like, well, there's no stoichiometry. How can I teach chemistry without stoichiometry? There's got to be stoichiometry. Well, if you look in the performance expectation, in order for the kids to do the performance expectation, they're going to have to know a little bit about stoichiometry. It's just not necessarily always spelled out.
do we have parents who know what we're talking about?
I am not a clueless.
It's an example.
When you check gram for moles and gram for liters.
It's the mathematical dimensional analysis that contributes to the law of conservation of matter.
And when you cook, you have to have the right number of beads. And when you cook, you have to have the right number of beads.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just, I mean, it's one of those things that you kind of, I mean, when you're dealing with these and trying to figure out how to do this in the classroom, this is where the professional development piece that I mentioned before comes into play. You've got to make certain whatever we decide, the teachers have a full understanding of what it is that you're after. That's why when you call up the standards, there's those red clarification words after the black print, because that's that's trying to get the picture across.
That's so powerful.
Yes, because if not, I mean, if you look at the blue placemat, like I said, I mean, I can teach farm making and all of this. I mean, you can get too general. You can get too specific and you can get too general at the same time. It's kind of you have to find the happy medium.
Okay, you wanna come over and maneuver to the next screen that we should see?
Which one do you want to, what do you want to see?
I think we
Standards
ought
on one
to,
of them, or?
I think we ought to pick something like, interdependent relationship in ecosystems under life science for middle school, and just look at what the broad topics
That
are.
probably is a good one to start with, because
Objectives.
most people have a idea.
Generalized understanding.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so there's two. Do you want me to read them? Can you read them? Can't read them? Okay. The first one says, construct an explanation that predicts the patterns of interactions among organisms across multiple ecosystems. Then there's a clarification statement that I can read if you want. And the second one says, evaluate competing design solutions for maintaining biodiversity and ecosystem services. That one then says, examples of ecosystem services could include water purification, nutrient recycling, prevention of soil erosions, and examples of design solution constraints could include scientific, economic, and social considerations. Yes. And the reason, the first code MS would be in middle school, HS high school.
And the LS for life science. Yeah, so they're all coded.
So is this appropriate for this younger student? Because,
And really, this is not that, this section I don't think is all that different. Ecosystems are ecosystems. I don't think there's much difference between this and the old ones. And I don't mean that bad.
The difference would come as that performance standard, as you move into the upper level, the high school.
Yes.
The difference would come in the depth at which you taught that. I mean, you might just touch on the water cycle in middle school, and so they have to understand what the water cycle is and how water moves through it. And then in the high school level, you might actually talk about the water cycle and how it's not just related to how water moves, but how it's related to all the different parts of the atmosphere, the lithosphere, and then how that also interacts with the carbon cycle. And so, I mean, you get more complex as you move in. So
That's a good point. Maybe that second one, that probably is different. What you'll see on NGSS compared to the other ones is this evaluated design or proposed design. That's pretty unique to NGSS.
That's what I'm sitting here, I'm trying to picture a middle school student being able to evaluate designs.
Oh, they can.
Oh, they
can.
do well on that.
They do pretty well.
At least here in ecosystems, because the kids do really well in ecosystems.
they've been learning it.
They've been learning. That's the one thing that is done awesome, and they just keep getting better on.
but the problem is, see, I deal with that every day. And, I own property, I own cattle, I own grass, I control water. These kids can't do anything about it. I mean, you're given these big ideas, and they can't do anything about it. So, even us adults we do have adult discussions about this stuff, and we can do something about it. So while we, probably if they knew more information, the more information that you can learn, and the concepts and stuff, when you start getting into, how we're going to play this out, and the kids, I can just feel the frustration of the kids. I really want to do something. I want to save the world, but I can't do anything. And so we're bringing this stuff up.
You bring up a wonderful point, and this is the struggle within the classroom. That standard is written kind of broadly, and so maybe I don't, since I'm a middle school teacher, maybe I don't tackle something such as farming, but like we look at well, I teach a lot of space, so we look at how do they design a water system on the International Space Station. And so they will do something that is a simpler model of that within the classroom on how to purify water and things along those lines. Maybe in high school, they would come out and look at a farm and look to see what kind of systems could maybe help or what you're doing and how that's a good thing. Do you see what I'm saying? The whole evaluate thing isn't necessarily going to be to point out what's wrong. It's to expose kids to lots of different ideas of how things are taken care of and how they can all be equal because there's no perfect design solution.
One of our teachers brought in those new water bottles that you can use while camping, and you put water in them, and it purifies it for drinking. So it wasn't like you said, you didn't tackle, you're going to purify the city's water, but you're stranded out here using distillation and evaporation. How can you do that?
Because you're absolutely correct. Kids want to have a solution, and they want to see something, and they want to see progress with it. So as a teacher, I pick situations to where they can actually have that. You can test the water before and test the water after and know that there was a difference made. Whereas what you're referring to, you're right, they don't have much control, nor is it anything that they can see a finish to.
So that's kind of, I just look at the confusion that these kids seem overwhelmed. Either they know what, when I was, it's been a long time since I've been in school. A lot of this stuff I never even got to like college or after. And so I think we're throwing out these big ideas, have the social issues, and we're thinking, then we're telling them they're going to solve. Well, if you like to frustrate somebody, that's how you give them these big things that they can't handle. What you do is you give them little things.
Well, I think the confusion is that we're just throwing these problems out with them. We've given in the classroom that is doing this, we've given them the smaller tools first to get to that big picture. We're not just throwing them out there and saying, hey, here's an issue we're going to learn about water purification today. Here's your problem. Good luck. We've talked to them already. We've given them a set of content to build up to that. So we're not just.
This is a way for kids to show that they learn what we were trying to teach.
I can give you an example. In my class, I have a chemistry and the environment class, and we teach water quality. We teach solubility, everything in this water unit. And the culmination, after I've taught them how things dissolve in water, how, to the point of heavy metals, to dissolve oxygen, to just, there are different salts that dissolve in the water. After we've gone through all of that information and we've done some application in the lab, then the culminating project is I give them data from a fish kill. And we talk about how, using all of those resources that you've learned, figure out why there was a fish kill. Here's the data, what caused the fish kill. And so they've then used all those little tools that I've given them along the way to solve a problem. And while that doesn't translate perfectly to the real world, it does give them some of those critical thinking skills, which is what most teachers are wanting their students to do. Can you critically think and solve a problem? I give my students the example of, so this isn't science, but all of a sudden your car stereo stops working. What do? You try this and see if that fixes it. You try this, it's still the scientific method, and you're still going through that critical thinking process. I had a student who told me one day, Ms. Bending, you told me that these processes I would use in the real world, these critical thinking and problem solving, and I even used stoichiometry, because I had to figure out the ratio of what I needed, of a chemical that I needed, because I was working in a pool business this summer. So I actually used stoichiometry, which most kids don't leave my classroom using stoichiometry ever again. But, so I understand that you're concerned that we're just giving them these big things, but we've given them the tools, at least in a good classroom. We have given them the tools to build up to that problem solving and evaluating. We're not starting at evaluating, we're starting with the content and giving them the tools to be able to do that.
And in addition, we're giving them a problem that there is they can propose a solution too, and they can be evaluated on whether or not that solution is correct or not.
Those both sound very ACT-like also. And the one thing that I always say, there's only one test. All these tests we give in the state only matter to adults. There's one test that matters to kids, and that's the ACT. And it requires them to look at competing arguments and to design solutions of data. And we most certainly want to, even though it doesn't get published in the papers as much, but ACT, that's really important to those kids.
You know, what I do is on soil erosion, I actually set up a little experiment where they have different types of soils, and we're talking about farming, and I teach in the farming community. So the kids know about soils, they know about grasses. And we actually do the experiment with soil erosion and metrically determine how much is taken off of it, we run water on it, or we run a big fan on it, or whatever, trying to control the variables. Then we take that and we talk about, you know, the great dust bowl and what's happening now in California. And we try to wrap all that into something. It's not a huge thing for them to go out and solve the world, but it opens their eyes to our environment and what we have done to the environment in my generation, and possibly what their generation could be helping with. I mean, that's kind of how I wrap it too. And they get involved in it. If they got a little cookie sheet with dirt and some grass and some water and a water hose and a fan, they really get into that. And it's not huge. No, it's not huge. It's not going to solve those problems, but it helps them to realize, hey, there's something going on in California. Hey, there is something going on in Arizona.
And we might be able to help. We might be able to work on something on a small scale, and enough small scale things will build to a larger scale.
Say my dad's doing no-till farming. Is that going to help?
You know, America is built on individual property rights. I mean, you own this ground, and if you destroy it, you weren't taken care of. But, we're destroying our ecosystem as we speak, and the government is helping to do it.
But these type of standards are the type of things that open my ability as a teacher to step outside of that box and please and say, okay, I'm going to do this in order to get them to here. And please doesn't give me that opportunity. This is a boom, boom, boom. This day here, this day here, this day here. Whereas in these kind of standards give me that opportunity to be creative.
Well, sometimes in an ag community, your set of standards would be different than it would be in a city. So
I don't know if the standards are different, having worked in multiple areas around the state. The standards aren't different. The practical use of the standards is different.
and that will control it.
And you as a board member, have the right to control that local.
You don't have any control over it. And Tessie tells you what.
No.
Do you guys have local control over your curriculum?
We're doing NGSS right now.
If we don't do what Tessie tells us, we'll become uncredited.
No, we do our own curriculum.
We do our own curriculum
We do
now.
our own curriculum.
I know where you're coming from, and it's like I fully understand where you're coming from in the concept. But you guys still choose your local curriculum. You guys choose where you're teaching it. Your middle school science teacher chooses what they're doing, and you guys have, as a board, have the right to say that. DESE's going to come down and say, this is what we're going to measure you on, and you're going to be measured on this assessment over here. So I understand where you're coming from. They're saying you got to do it because we're measuring and testing on it. But you guys still have that local control to say we're going to teach soils at this point in time for 6th graders, 8th graders, whoever you want to do it.
But that would be probably more like what that
Yeah.
and another subject area.
Yeah, your FFA is definitely teaching it, but also your middle school science is teaching it because they're still teaching some of these same concepts of the ecosystem and what Sandy's teaching. That's being taught. Now your FFA is taking it, kind of like you said that when you were in school, you didn't understand it until later on, but you saw it, and I'll bet you just didn't understand some of the scientific pieces of it until later on, but you had the practical knowledge because you watched people on the farm do it. And that practical piece is what we're trying to teach with it, because at the same time at a different grade level.
Well, the thing is, we didn't have to solve those problems.
Right.
These kids we're trying to make them solve those problems. We're trying to make political capital out of it. That's the question. Are we trying to make political capital out of it?
We're trying to open their eyes to it so that if they are presented something on a ballot issue, that they can read the information about it and understand
understand what's going on.
And I don't think they're trying to solve the world's problems, they're trying to give knowledge of what possibly is out there in the world of these problems.
Let's put knowledge in there, I'm all for knowledge.
Right, and I think that's the goal, and the teachers here that are talking, they're not teaching specifically about something, they're teaching general knowledge, like the California issue and the soil erosions now that we have these fires and the drought and everything. That's a global perspective, not just a Joplin perspective on it, but you could also take the storm damage from Joplin as a perspective of the tornado damage. We can see the erosional effects now from that directly related to the storm damage. As a farmer, you're the same way. You can sit there and teach these basic concepts of the ecosystem and say, if I do this to the land, this is what's going to happen. And so it's just taking all those things and putting them together and giving them that practical knowledge.
And last on this is, the way these are written, you have the opportunity to have several different ideas being presented, and that's what you want in the classroom. If you want kids interested, then your ideas, how you present your solutions hopefully are different, because then I'm listening to it as another student in the classroom, and I'm going, well, I didn't think of what Jenna said, and I didn't think of what Jack said, and then all of a sudden I'm trying to change mine, and hopefully you're sitting there too, and you listen to what I have to say, and you're both going, well, I didn't think of that either. And now we've really broadened the base of what the kids are doing, and that's another piece that's important. When you have things that are written narrowly, then what kids are producing all looks alike, and then who really cares if you present it or not. Whereas if you have things written where it has the possibility of having different ideas being presented all on the same topic, then we get discussion points, and then everybody increases their knowledge in the classroom.
You don't have to solve the world.
No.
You don't have to solve a big issue, but having kids exposed to something to learn about it, sometimes that's where a kid picks up passion for it. Is they heard about something like, that's really neat, and they get interested in that, and they're like, I think I want to go to college and study that. So it's just kind of exposing them to any of those things too. They don't have to actually solve the issue, but they might be interested enough to say, hey, I'd like to be able to solve that issue. I think I'll study that and solve it.
I'm still concerned, sorry I'm the turbulent principal, but still concerned that we're wasting time because this is aligned to the ELA, which is copyrighted. And so I really love the passionate teachers. I love you guys.
Well,
don't interrupt me.
You're attitude sometimes.
But it's like we haven't convened as a committee that the bill calls us to do. We're not following the bill.
The science standards are not aligned to ELA at all, in any way.
They are going through the ELA, which is copyrighted. It's copyrighted, so you're...
But this is not the Common Core. Yes, the Common Core is copyrighted. And yes, look it up. These are copyrighted. But it states on there directly that it can be used by a state entity in any way, shape, or form. It states in a public license.
I don't think you guys have the right information on this, actually. And I understand I'm not going to, beat a dead horse here. But I just, you're full on into the discussion of the NGSS here. But I'm just saying.
Can I ask what you would do?
I came here per 1490 to convene as a work group, not to be facilitated by Bessie. We haven't even decided as a group to appoint the chair to become our own committee. That we haven't even been given enough of the information in advance of these meetings to be ready to be having these discussions that you guys are passionately, forging ahead with.
No, but I mean, which standards would you start with?
I think we're not there yet.
So what should we be doing?
This day's meeting should have been about the basics of what this committee is going to do, not with Desi facilitating, but how we are going to convene per the bill. But you guys are forging ahead with reviewing the NGSS, which is, I just think
I was under the assumption that what we were doing right now with NGSS was just kind of explaining what they were.
Right.
So that, I understand that's what Kimberly and I were just talking about. There is a copyright down at the bottom. And Kimberly and I were just talking, okay, so the bill says we are supposed to use stuff from public domain. So if this is not considered part of public domain, we were just discussing where are we going to get our standards from to start with.
have been called to develop, and you guys are educators, you're definitely.
In 6 days, there's no way.
There's
It's
no
not
way
6
we
days.
can.
The meetings have to be convened in 6 days. We don't have to have the standards written by October 1st.
So we can have as many meetings as we
Okay,
need
we
to
look
have.
at
We can have as many meetings in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
As we.
Next
that's
1 year.
One
1
year.
year.
We don't,
Right.
we're kind of just blindly flying ahead.
But I don't want to develop from scratch.
No, there's no way.
I don't think.
There's
we
no
should.
reason.
Well, Newton, if I had seen farther, it's because I stood on the shoulders of giants.
There's no reason to start from scratch, we have good material.
Yeah, so, okay, so just on a question, what is the top performing state for science right now?
We don't know, and I don't know, because everybody
What
uses.
measurement tool would you use?
That's right. We don't have a test that, and that's
Do you
a
want to look at
problem.
ACT?
Oh, that's true.
Well, yeah.
But ACT is
It's not
not
science.
content, it's science.
Data analysis.
Yeah.
Like in reading and math, I know Massachusetts has, you know, they've always been recognized as being a high
But our
quality
work exams are
standard.
What are they
In
using?
science.
I'm sorry, Phil, what do they use?
I think they developed their own.
Well, at one point they did, yeah.
Who was that?
But I think.
Well, she said Massachusetts.
I said, you know, in some areas, that's a state that was recognized as having, you know, very high.
They stood up there for a while, yes.
I think at this point, I think two things need to happen. I think we need to look over the old, look over this, and look over some other options and kind of figure out what would work best for us once we get. I think we're in an information gathering portion right now.
Oh, I understand what Tony's saying. We have not appointed a chair or anything like that yet, which
will not come until tomorrow.
So
I think we work together for a little
Right.
while.
Right, you had said that earlier, we're gonna meet tomorrow.
Right.
Well, I mean, I don't see why that necessarily needs to be either. If we're at a point where, or we get to a point today where we feel like we can do that. That's not.
Well, we get to that one fine, but we haven't, someone just mentioned a third option, and so far, I've given you 2. There's a lot of material here to be distributed to you.
the first one is the original standards.
Oh,
the
okay.
Glees,
I don't have
the Glees and the Clees.
Yes, right. Please.
Yeah, we can do it. I can.
They're on the copies over on the
Get them
table.
online.
Yeah, I
Okay.
And I will pass out the rest of that later, but this is just to show you the one strand that we're dealing with, so that you get a feel
I
for
mean,
it.
we could gather information, we could get science standards for every single
Right.
state. And we have, there's 49 more states that have science standards.
There's already, this was done by a group of people, and it's been through review, several state reviews, several personal reviews. Same with the framework. I mean, this is our most current document when it comes to standards and has our most current information with regard to science within it.
But it has no track record. So.
I'm not saying it's perfect.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's been through quite a bit, and that if we were gonna pick a document to start with, I'd much prefer to start with it than something that was 2008.
Yeah, and to Tony's.
Oh, I totally agree with that.
To Tony's point, I don't think we're blindly, there's things I would change on this, big time. But there's only a couple things I keep on the other, you know, it's just where you
Right.
start.
But I'm looking at, you know, the laboratory of the states, and if we have a state that has a science program that has been up and running
Sure.
and, you know, tested live in the classroom for a decade versus something that's a year old, maybe it would be the ones we have and this and another that we're comparing and contrasting to develop our own.
So you have a third one that you'd like to bring forth to the group, I think that would be appropriate.
I do not, but I think I could probably do a little bit of research and find us one. So I could consult with some folks, and we certainly have plenty of people in here whose expertise we could pull from.
And I'm gonna make a really crazy general statement, but based on our earlier pre-lunch conversation, and to the people with Desi, please don't be mad at me, but from what I understood, this, which I think was 180 subjects in 170 days, was pretty much a non-starter for everybody in the room. Nobody liked this.
That's fine.
No, I'm just throwing it out there. So I mean, why don't we scrap this one and move on to either this, or this one, or if we want to look at what was the other one somebody mentioned, it was in Massachusetts.
I've got it pulled up right here.
So we can look at, let's look at those two.
Technology Engineering Curriculum Framework.
What's that?
Go to, oh my gosh, I just looked up and my eyes crossed. Go to Massachusetts Department of Education. I just typed in Massachusetts Science Standards. I just Googled that.
Oh, I'm sorry, Massachusetts. Okay. I can't spell it.
Abbreviate,
Yeah.
FA.
Did you mean translate? Yes.
Yeah.
I should be in the language arts.
So, I mean, if you look at
No, you shouldn't.
No.
Now, this is why we teach science.
That's right.
We don't always spell right, and
That's right.
we can't draw, so we do science.
What did you say?
I just typed in Massachusetts State Science Standards, and I pulled up a PDF. Right there, current curriculum frameworks. Click that, and it will let you.
If I can get Kurt's.
No, go up where it says current
Right.
curriculum
Oh,
frameworks.
yes.
And then you should, scroll down, and I clicked on the PDF, October 2006. There you go, click on the PDF. There's the Massachusetts state. So, if we're all saying Massachusetts is doing great, let's see what they're doing.
And I think that's key right now is that we need to be gathering information before we ever go start picking apart individual standards, et cetera. Is we need to, because before we start doing anything like that, we need to really have a plan of how are we going to tackle it, because there's a lot there. Are we going to go by one key group first, and then or how are we have a plan basically?
It's almost like narrow down to 2 or 3 and then put them side by side
Yeah.
per unit.
It's like,
Right.
I need
Yeah.
time to take all this stuff and sit down and
Right.
look at it side by side and say, what's common in all of it, and go from there.
And it's hard to do the whole document. You pick
Right.
a unit at a time or something.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's going to take time, but it's something that I know we can do. We plan accordingly.
But even in the Massachusetts, they had some of these same things that you guys were asking about with the next generation science standards. If you read through here, I'm on page 23 right now. Guiding Principle 5 and Guiding Principle 6. Investigation, experimentation, and problem solving are central to science and technology engineering education. An effective science and technology engineering program builds upon and develops students' literacy skills and knowledge. Those are some of the same things that the next generation is saying.
You're on Earth and Space.
Okay, maybe I'm not. I'm on page, sorry. It says 23 on here. I'm on page 15, actually.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
15 if you're looking at the bottom of the page, but 23 if you're looking at the
Oh,
PDF
I got
right
you.
here.
All right.
Well, I guess to your point, if we're saying that the next gen is potentially a good standard, and we're saying Massachusetts is potentially a good standard, and if they say the same thing, then I say we write that one in and we move on to the next one. I mean, if we think that those are, because from what I hear from people I talk to, Massachusetts does a pretty good job with some of this stuff.
Right,
And
so.
if these guys are telling us that next gen does a pretty good job with this stuff, then
Well, and
those are our two.
that's kind of one of the things that part of what I'm saying is the concern is next generation too much attached to Common Core? Well, okay, Massachusetts is doing the same thing. They're adding literacy to their science. That's not a bad thing. It's do we want it to be aligned specifically to Common Core? That's to each their own. But literacy in science is good.
Writing and science.
Writing in science is good.
And
Well,
science is
we want them to be able to read before they start picking teachers.
Yeah, I want them to, and that's another thing that we talked about in our district when we're talking about curriculum. Literacy in science doesn't have to just mean writing lab reports. My students being able to read chemical equations that's literacy for my class. That's it's not just can they read research, which is still good, but
It's not just Common Core. You look at all the authors out there about how to improve school. Milker's a big one, is non-fiction reading being the biggest key to into non-fictional reading, you basically throw everything else out, concentrate on non-fictional reading, and you're going to improve the test scores for every single child.
Yeah. No, so it turns out it actually lists that Massachusetts is now a lead NGSS state.
Yeah.
So I think they're converting over.
Even if they didn't, apparently.
Right,
science
that probably made it easy for them.
Yeah.
They've always had a strong engineering education.
So,
Component
sorry,
for their students.
can you tell me what is a nonfiction? What is nonfiction reading? I mean, what are they reading?
Well, what they're talking about there, and the key concept in what Schmoker says is you have to take reading and break it down to comprehension. So it's no matter what you read, textbook, an article, a newspaper article, anything like that, you have to be able to take it out, pull factual information out of it, and get an understanding of it, and be able to make a valid argument about it. He says if you teach kids how to do that, you're teaching comprehension, and you're teaching improvement in all those basic skills. So it's just taking the idea of taking something, reading like a House bill or a middle school physical science, and pulling the information out of this paragraph that's relevant information. And so it's that comprehension of it, what do you really need to know out of this? There's a lot of stuff in here you don't need to know, but it's pulling the main points out that you're going to have an understanding of what they're needing, and it's teaching kids to do that. So that's what they talk about with Common Core is the literacy in all classrooms, is teaching the kids how to read and pull information out.
So I guess my question is, because again, I'm older, and we learned how to do that somehow. So where did it break down?
I don't know.
Our technology increased. Our technology increased. The way we gather information changed, and so we are not as dependent reading as we were in the past. You watch it.
Well,
Yeah, we watch it.
I think too, we tend to, well, I don't say we, but I have seen a lot of teachers tend to like spoon feed notes. Like they'll write on the board, these are the notes that you should be taking, and they will write on the board exactly what they want the kids to know. So the kids don't have to read the book and pull the notes out. They copy the notes that the teacher writes on the board, and that was one of the things I used to do in my sixth grade classroom was I would say, okay, let's look at this page, this little section here that we're looking at. What is going to be important for us to know off this? You tell me what should be in our notes from this. And so we would practice that, but it was part of our science lesson of teaching them to take notes and pull it right.
Right, and I think that stems from the society that we're in now. I mean, those of us who are trying to teach those skills in our classroom, I think the teachers who went to directly just note taking, it was easier because kids didn't want to read as much. It doesn't take as much time. It's easier. Let me just tell you what I want you to know, and that'll be easy, and then you've got it.
And then I sit there and I would have students in a high school class sit there, and one of them would take all the notes down. The other kids would sit back, and I'm like, I'm like, we're going over things that are going to be on the test. Why aren't you taking notes? Well, she's taking notes, and we'll just get it from her. We're just going to get it from her later. They didn't even write down the notes that.
We've created a society of just tell me what you want me to know, because it's an instantaneous instant gratification. Just tell me what you want me to know. I'll know it. Just tell me what you want me to know.
But if we back this up just a little bit more, because we talk about teaching all kids, some kids are able to listen and take notes and do whatever needs to be done and do all that simultaneously. Some kids can listen very well or take notes very well, but those two actions together will get them lost faster than anything. So you have to figure out a way to mediate between all those different learning styles, because I have kids in my class that, yes, will sit back and they will listen and they'll take it all in, but I can test them and quiz them and talk to them afterward, and they were paying attention and they got it just as well as a kid who was scripting down the notes. Some kids take their phone out and just take a picture of the screen.
We were talking about literacy though, and so like reading your textbook or reading your thing, being able to pull out of the written.
Notes are delivered in my class with me asking you questions and talking about stuff, and then we figure out what needs to go
Is that
down.
considered literacy though? I mean, when
It
you're.
depends on if we're doing it over something that we've read, or if it's something that I'm trying to figure out what they come to class already knowing.
Okay, I thought we were talking about when you read material.
Yeah, she
Yeah,
was
but
kind of
you're still
asking,
gonna
what
need
are we
to go
reading
over
on nonfiction? Is that what you were asking?
Me.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
what
Did we answer that?
Because I don't
I don't think
understand
it
if that
means-
means
Yeah.
a manual, you know, or if it means just a nonfiction book.
No.
You know, it's not Cyrano de Bergerac,
Usually in
it's something.
science, in science, it's being able to interpret research, it's being able to write a lab report based on a designed experiment.
It could be reading the
It could be reading the textbook.
It could be a newspaper article.
Could be a newspaper article for current events. Yeah, peer review, yeah, the research article for peer review. So, yeah, there's a lot there for nonfiction.
Sometimes we use an article to introduce a topic. This is what's going on in the world.
Case study.
So they know, that we're just not learning something out of the book. There's an actual application.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
But boy, we found, I doubt I'm alone, we have found that the kids are having a really hard time reading a magazine article or a newspaper article that's science-like and pulling out the information. Like if you ask them a few questions, it's tough. And we haven't solved it at all. We keep trying.
Keep practicing.
Keep practicing.
Now, is that, and pardon my ignorance, is that a reading literature understanding problem, or is that really because the language and phraseology is so different in scientific typewriting than it would be in creative
I
writing?
don't know. I think it's a reading.
You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I even do things that aren't very high level, and they want to take their finger and find the answer.
They don't want to.
That's it. They don't.
Dude, I want to do that when they hand me a pile of legislation.
Right, exactly.
But it doesn't
Yeah.
work that way.
And I think that's your key, is it's a mixture of both.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a problem with just the structure of reading something for information rather than reading it for enjoyment. Because a lot of times kids today don't read for enjoyment or for information, they read for enjoyment only. And so it's taking the scientific terms or math terms or any of those, and how do I teach that? And that's the teaching in the regular classroom, the science teacher. How do I read a science article, the research piece, that stuff, and take information out of it that's relevant for what I'm doing? And I think that's the biggest thing, and I know the Common Core talks about that, is teaching reading in the content field. Because that's where it has to be done. To teach kids how to read a manual, to read something like that. The statistics out there are not very good for our ability to take a kid and have them leave the high school or leave the school and read a manual for comprehension and how to do it. The military says that 65% of the kids that are coming out of high school aren't eligible to get in the military. It might be more than that, because they can't read a manual. So it's taking these kids and teaching them how to read the nonfiction, the manual, the literature, and take that information and utilize it.
Some of them can't read the instructions on my chemistry labs.
No.
Well, and I was gonna say that, okay, so my daughter, I had to request a physics book for her physical system, her advanced physical systems class, because she never came home with a book. I saw that she started struggling in her class, and I said, well, let me see what you're studying, let me see your book. So she comes to me and she has this notebook where they're taking all kinds of notes, and they have a million papers stapled into it and all kinds of stuff, and I'm like, well, where's your book? So it's almost like I believe that there are some classes that are not requiring reading the text to begin with. So if they're not reading the text, then how are they going to get those skills to understand the text?
It was a lot easier to do it this way.
We're talking what, computers Cliff Notes, right? As opposed to actually reading the book?
I don't know, but I did get a book though, so. But I had requested as a parent, and that shouldn't be, so, and I know that's different from district to district, but if those are skills that we're trying to teach our kids, is to comprehend this stuff, then they need to have books in their hands.
And some of that
reading a
goes
chapter on the topic.
Some of that goes to money. We were supposed to get a whole new set of books this year for chemistry, one for each student, and guess what? Money ran out, so now we're getting classroom sets. So I don't have one to give to each student, so I have to do more. All my students create notebooks. We have that, so we have to use the literacy part in class, and kids can check books out from me, but they don't have one. It's a money thing too. So
About $100 a book.
yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're going, and then you move into upper level and it's $150 to $200.
That's right, yeah.
Before you go to your guidance.
Yeah.
In most schools.
Yeah. So there's a money issue too when it comes to that. So we're trying our best to do literacy in the classroom with what we've got. So that's not something we're going to solve today either. Unless somebody has a bunch of money. Maybe we can talk to Rex about just donating.
Don't look at me when you say that. I don't talk to him. He doesn't take my calls.
You just made eye contact with me.
Okay.
That's all.
he doesn't take my calls. And I guess that comes back to my point. Is that something that we, as part of looking at science curriculum, whether we use Massachusetts or Next Gen, do we need to look at the literary component of that, or is that something we're going to say to the ELA group for 6 through 12 and say, guess what? You're going to have to come up with a curriculum that includes technical writing, or whatever you want to call it. I call it technical writing, for whatever, lack of a better understanding.
I think they're astute enough to already have that included in the standards that they will eventually adopt. I think they recognize the importance of reading in other content areas other than.
Well, and I would hope so. And I didn't mean that to be insulting. I learned a long time ago never to assume like someone.
No, it's a good point. And actually, in our district, the language arts teachers have asked science to do more because our language arts scores have gone down because of the introduction of nonfiction pieces on the language arts test. And they haven't taught that before, and they should be, I think, but they haven't, so it's been on us a little bit to try.
I've heard English language arts teachers also comment and said, all day long in all their other classes, they read nonfiction text. This is the only class they read fiction, and now you're intruding on that.
Sure.
That's, I've heard that from them as well. So.
Which is, I'm sure, a discussion that's going on in the ELA right now.
If only there were more hours in the day.
The consensus is that we are going to look at these, and we want to also look at Massachusetts.
Massachusetts is bringing
Yeah, Massachusetts looks like they're going to NGSS. We could look at the old Massachusetts.
Right, so
Since
they're
doing well.
going to the new, then does someone else have another recommendation about a second set that you would like to see?
Texas definitely doesn't, they don't go for any of them. So they do their own. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're going to look at one that is their own, Texas, that would be one to look at.
The National Science Foundation just published some not too long ago also.
That's the framework.
Is that what that is?
So that's the framework. So that orange box that we showed, that has all the framework pieces in and the performance expectations. It has to align with that framework.
And then do you look at 2? Because I never get less than 3 bids on a project.
Well, let the group come up with the second one.
I'm just tossing it out there.
I don't think Texas is good. Texas is always inferior to most states.
Yeah, Texas always boasts these high test scores, but when, I'm sorry, I could try to find it tonight. There's a group that evaluated their threshold, their benchmark for a passing is way low, and when you then bring in ACT or bring in others, all of a sudden their high scores are much lower than others. So it's so hard to do because we're all taking different tests to know what's really the best. Mm-hmm.
And there was a time, 5 years ago, when throughout the nation, and I would attend conferences, everybody was looking to Missouri because our standards were a year above everybody else's. It's more difficult for kids to pass our standards than it was to pass standards in their states.
That's the show me standards you're talking about.
Yes.
Yes.
I
Okay.
think that's because we were aligned with the NAEP. The NAEP is the National Association of Education Progress. So in 2009.
Do they have standards?
We aligned with
NAEP has their own
We
standards?
aligned with NAEP, and so our standards were one of the highest in the
So if NAEP has standards, would that be one?
That would be a document that would probably be worthwhile looking at.
Okay. So that's 2 then. Is that 2 out here? Okay.
One of the other things that, like I said, I'm from Ferguson Forest and I'm surrounded by several districts that are either currently unaccredited or on the verge of losing accreditation, including our own test scores have gone down. We keep talking about raising the standard, and obviously we most, awesome students in the country so that they can go and do wonderful things. But what about the districts and students in particular who are already struggling at the standards that are in place? And then you go and you set the bar up even higher. Won't they be kind of left behind even more? And so that's why
There's no child left behind.
Are we trying to raise the bar or improve it?
I thought we were trying to clarify it.
I mean,
Because the glees and all of that are so spread out, so large that when you go to do an assessment, it ends up as a trivia test.
Right.
And so my understanding is we wanted a clearer, simpler picture so that no matter what institution you go to in the state of Missouri, everybody has a clear picture of what a life science student should be able to do at the end of their process, what a physical science student should be able to do. And as it currently stands, they're so large and unwieldy, nobody can really accomplish all of them. So my understanding was we were trying to actually maybe clarify, not necessarily raise it higher, but to just make it a clear, obvious target so that we know when we've reached it and we can identify where we're coming up short.
and if there are less of them, then everybody, everybody's not having to pick, okay, I'm gonna make it to these, and I'm gonna make it to these. Everybody can make it to all of
If I
them.
had to say anything, it would be please, 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 let's have a little bit less that we have to worry about.
Yeah.
Let's give me a little bit of time to actually achieve some depth of knowledge with these students.
The bill actually says that we'd be approving 75, is it? I believe 75 standards, and I'm not exactly sure how.
I think the bill
the
refers
actual
to
bill
the
refers to
these, it tells you how many there are. It's just a reference to this. It's just a reference.
Do you have any more of those?
You can have mine. I'd like one.
There.
Jess, you want one? Yes, please.
You can have mine too. I have one else. That's fine.
And when we're information gathering, I suggest we probably all have a copy of the actual bill so that we can make sure that we're following the law as we're going through things.
I don't think there's more of those.
And this is appointing, email,
Yes.
email.
I was emailed, yes. Oh, no. Emailed. I was emailed a letter from the speaker. I was not emailed anything else. From what I understand this,
Who's the one who appointed you?
Speaker Jones.
Okay, so did he give you a copy of the bill?
I have a copy of the bill, yes.
We were, in the email, we were told to print one out and bring it with us.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say. An expectation does.
But from my understanding, there was an email or something that had gone out from Desi also with some documents that you could print off.
Not to you all, because all of your names were not in it.
Okay, because I didn't get it. Oh, where does it say?
What about the people that are here? Do we get to redo all this for them, or do they just miss out? How do we deal with the people that should be here, but couldn't be here because of the way it was so thrown together?
You know, frankly, we don't know that because it's not our process as to how you got nominated here. So you need to ask the person who recommended you, whose place did you take. So I accepted all who showed up. I had no idea who all of you were going to be.
They can watch the video.
So actually,
Well, there's no way to get everybody in here on every single day.
If we would have done our own thing without Bessie facilitating here, we could have decided to honor their commitment and their decision to be committed to this and waited and set up meetings that were.
There's requirements of the timeline.
No, not to.
It's within 1 month. Look on page 8.
30 days.
30 days. 30 days.
We could have, I'm just saying, we could have honored the status of those people that are not here today, but instead, we're just like smoking through it and we see 30 days.
I thought it said that we had to convene
Convene.
by October 1st.
Which is what this
Yes,
is.
so
And
we
then
have
can do
convened,
whatever we want.
so now we have to structure ourselves.
We just have to.
And then we have to,
We don't have to have it done every day.
No, I know, nobody said that.
Okay, sorry. No, I was just gonna say, on the first page of the bill, section A1, says by rule and regulation, consistent with the provisions contained in section 160.526. The State Board of Education shall adopt no more than 75 academic performance standards, which establish the knowledge, skills, and competencies necessary for students to successfully advance through the public elementary and secondary education system of the state. So we're only going to be adopting 75 standard performance standards.
Probably 75 on that.
And that's the one from, those are the old standards.
And that's not a revision for House Bill 1490, that was their replacement.
That was their,
Yeah.
I'm confused by that. Is that 75 all together?
That's 75 altogether, that doesn't separate.
Math and science and.
No.
So another thing we might.
I'll take a minute to read the whole bill. Wouldn't that be a good thing, just like everybody take time to read the bill?
I don't know, does everybody have, well, everybody has to have, I don't know. Cause this is from the original 1993 statute. Now, with that being the case, then I would think that we would need to make sure that we prioritize whether we have, basically our specific standards, and then have those be adopted, and then maybe consider this, like, notes on of these are how we can implement those standards. And I think if we're gonna be doing that, we need to select how many standards we're actually going to use.
No, our focus is only on science.
Oh, I understand, but if it's 75 total, then we need to figure out.
Well, you don't,
Are we 175, is that what that was?
No.
That's the old act, that's how it's done.
That's already done. So we're
75
focusing from the content area of science.
That would be replacement.
Right.
There's 75, yes, there's 75 on that. There's 75 academic standards broken down into 4 bills and amendments.
Okay, I just noticed something. What we're reading here where it says no more than 75, it says up there the very first line of section A, it says sections and lists all those numbers, it says are repealed. This is one of those that is repealed.
No.
If up at the top it says, where sections, and it says 160.526, the third one, sections, 160.526 are repealed. And 8 new sections enacted in lieu of. Okay, then it goes down here and it gives us 160.526 says no more than 75 academics. So is that part of what was repealed?
So I think usually don't they strike one after the repealed sections if it's repealed in a.
Well, on a draft, no, they would just say repealing, the drafts and stuff, it happens.
So therefore this would be approved form and this should be current.
So they strike it out or repeal it.
So this is the revision of it.
Old is what's added in front.
These facts.
Old is what's gonna add.
Okay, so this is the revised, this is not the old. Okay.
I won.
So how does that affect what we're doing? How is that gonna affect what we're doing?
So from what I can understand so far is we're all in agreement that the current CLEs are insufficient. And insufficient to the point that it's probably not worth our time to try and improve. Okay? That we are looking for other documents like the NAEP, like NGSS, that have standards that are already done for us to use as documents for us to look at and try and see commonalities, see what we like, see what we don't like, type stuff as we propose what we believe the Missouri students should be learning in science grades 6 through 12.
That's correct.
And I know those of you who have looked through these more extensively, are there any pieces of those things that we said, yeah, I'm trying to go out and know that piece, but are all of those things covered? Is there anything in the standards, you know, the Missouri ones that we had, is there anything in there that is important, that has been left out?
That would be nice to look at before we proceeded, you know, because I personally don't know that. I would have liked to have had a meeting where we got all of our ducks in a row and then proceeded with what we're kind of doing today to give everybody the resources to get on the same page. Because you're saying, do we all agree that those standards were whatever? And
I'm just making certain I'm following along with the conversation. So I would suggest, personally speaking, that, you know, while they're not my favorite, that because they are our current standards, that's our third document that we look at, the third bit. Because then you can really see what it was and what we're trying to transform it to. So that's my personal opinion on that.
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying, I guess, and I asked this question earlier. I thought when we looked at what the current standards were, we found them not sufficient. That it was too much and too ambiguous, and the multiple choice trivia question test, the analogy that somebody used. If there's anything that great in here, I'm not a betting guy, but I'll bet you that your next gen standards already has it in there. Massachusetts already has it in there, and NAEP or NAP or whatever the other one is probably already has it in there.
You're correct, it is. When we
So
sat
let's
down,
just skip this one.
when we sat down and decided to go towards NGSS as a curriculum group,
Right.
we said, okay, and we clearly went through and read every single performance expectation, and we discussed who teaches this. And we made certain that we aligned and had our curriculum covered. So, does NGSS cover the CLEs? Yes. At least as far as a group of teachers sitting down and looking at them and discussing them, yes. So I can tell you that.
So you would say everything in those old ones is covered?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. But you're only looking at one little overworked 8th grade science teacher here.
Well, I didn't see your colleagues shaking in their heads in disagreement, so I think you're probably right. We're just looking for the consensus thing.
Yeah.
I still think, it's just me, but I operate under the KISS method. You know, next gen, Massachusetts, what'd you say, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and what else?
Well, I looked up two things. In 2011, and I'm not sure, I'd have to go back and look and see where they got their information from. But in 2011, the top 5 schools in the nation with science scores were Massachusetts, Minnesota, New Jersey, New Hampshire, New York. 2013 ACT scores, top scoring for science was Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Maine.
Massachusetts sounds like a winner to me.
Massachusetts looks good. New Hampshire and New York are on both of those lists as well. I don't know if they've adopted NGSS or not.
New York is a lead state, but what was the other one?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire's done it.
New Hampshire has.
Looking at very small state, very small population, very different population from what we have here in Missouri.
True. True, but those were, if we're wanting to look for information, I mean, if we're just doing our information gathering to see, okay, where do we even want to go, you know, if we're looking for top performers, those are our top performers.
Were they top performers using the
This
next
was
gens?
This is before.
Yeah, it'd be before.
This is before next gen. So.
To get all of those states.
I'm trying to pull up to make sure I'm right about the one.
Next gen was only released in Europe.
I'd still like to take one of them, one of their old ones, and look at.
Right.
And I don't.
Yeah, so none of that data would be in GSS.
Right. Yeah, all of this data is pre-NGSS.
These are the states that they consider themselves the lead of NGSS.
And what states are up on the board now? Is that what you put up there?
Yes, this is the ones that say they're lead NGSS states.
So I would just caution that sometimes, states don't always do things for the right reasons. So just because states that have been top performers are adopting NGSS doesn't mean that.
That's why I said I think we should still pick one of them,
Yeah.
please,
Yeah.
and pull
Take
the
Massachusetts old ones.
Right, that's
That's
right.
gonna be in NGSS now.
Can somebody say Connecticut? Connecticut is not on it.
So the 5 states, just for my notes, top 5 states for science scores, it was 2011, did you say?
2011 was what I had found.
And it was Maine, Massachusetts, New York, New Hampshire.
I'm sorry, in 2011, number 1 was Massachusetts, number 2 was Minnesota, number 3 New Jersey, number 4 New Hampshire, number 5 New York. The 2013 ACT scores, which we just said this'll get you good information, but it's not going to get you content information because that's not what the ACT is testing. Connecticut was number 1, Massachusetts was number 2, New Hampshire was number 3, New York was number 4, and Maine was number 5.
I know you said this several times, but that one was ACT. Was the other NAEP?
I'd have to look it up.
Okay, I just wondered what.
I can see if I can
It
find
almost has to be. It's the only test that.
That has a national.
A national test. Not every kid takes it, but it's.
You can compare apples to apples.
Yeah.
So if we've got our next generation standards, if we have Massachusetts potentially standards, and we have our old Missouri ones as a resource to refer to if we want to, is that adequate? Is that enough?
I would say you would pull the NAEP standards.
Oh, the NAEP, that's right, the NAEP standards.
Yeah.
Here, I'll pull up the Connecticut.
Well, then that's actually 4. I mean,
Well, no, because nobody's going to pay attention to the old Missouri ones, and they all hate them.
Well, maybe a strong word, but
Strongly dislike.
wishing for something better is very accurate.
well,
Missourians
I gotta think.
produced Missouri standards.
Yes. Yes.
I'm just saying, if
And
we're
if
looking
they
at,
were good at the time.
if we're looking at a specific skill, we can always go back to this and just say,
We
yeah,
need
we
to
cover
evolve.
those, you know.
Did they ever,
Yeah.
how
It's
many
not,
years?
it's not
did
bad
they
to have
have
sitting there.
It's just there so we can say, yeah, that was.
06, 07?
The revised was 2008, so these are 6 years old, and they were revised based off 2003. So really, in some aspects, you're looking at, 10 years. And once you get past 5 years in educational terms, there's usually research that maybe start incorporating because we have a better idea of how kids learn and get things
I
kind
saw
of
that.
arranged.
I think it was 2006.
Better idea how kids are.
2000, October 2006.
Yes. That maybe, things like teaching fractions to a 4-year-old is maybe not a good idea, but you see what I'm saying? So we learn a better time to introduce topics.
So shouldn't we just bring the bells? That's kind of what we're trying to do.
That's kind of what we're trying to do. Is maybe keep with the same concept, but change on how kids are being assessed on. I'm sorry, what?
Being assessed by the teachers.
Exactly, but, we worry about the test, but in some aspects, I guess I have some pie in the sky thinking here, that maybe if we change the standards enough, we'll force them to have a better test.
Yeah.
I'm
an
an
optimist,
optimist,
aren't you?
I like to think certain things.
So if we've settled, come to a conclusion about the 3 major tests we're going to take a look at, could we begin now with the middle school physical science for the NGSS? But these were 2013. I've just given those to you. This is the middle school. Get some work started, or you want to wait until tomorrow before we look at
I'd rather have them so I can actually look at them. You know, I mean, it's hard to read that. It's
Well, you
hard
have
to-
those, but you don't have the Massachusetts one.
No, she's saying.
You have the NGSS, but you're still right about all the others, you don't have those.
Yeah, I mean, if we're gonna use those to, like, so we have next gen, is this all, this isn't all the next gen?
No.
That's middle school?
That's middle school.
This is middle
All
school?
middle school.
And I have high school that I give you as well.
Okay, so we have next gen on that. So what we don't have yet is MAPE or Massachusetts.
That's
to
correct.
be able to look at.
That's slightly more homework than I can do overnight.
That's why we can do it in the meeting. We can devote an hour or two to reading.
Is there a special
You don't have
MAPE
to.
standards?
It's an assessment, it's not a curriculum. NAEP is, it's not a curriculum, NAEP is an assessment.
Yeah, I'm wondering if MAPE is gonna be,
So do they not have standards?
well, yeah, they probably have some assessment standards.
They're probably tied to national standards.
Oh, you're probably right.
So they're probably tied to the old national science.
Which are now, which are gone.
Yes. Which really, the NAEP is probably now gonna be tied to the NGSS.
MAPE will change to NGSS now.
So, yeah.
NAEP standards went through a revision in 2009 now. So they're not probably,
Oh, I think
I think it's
that's
worthwhile to learn.
Yes,
Click on it and see if it's there.
Yeah.
If they have, even if they're going to change, if they haven't, then that's still something that we.
There's a link, one back, that might be better, this one here. What is
It's a screen for those areas.
I'll let you ask you one account.
Yeah, I just, yeah. No child work, no. Tell me if you see something.
So back to Tony's point for a second, because it does seem, you know, in how we structure our work group, when we're voting on things, is it a quorum? Is it a simple majority? Is it Robert's Rules of Orders? Is it, how do we?
That's probably a norm we need to establish, is to decide how we're going to do that. Because I don't think we're ever gonna get everything unanimous.
No.
But yeah, I agree, we do need to establish a norm for that.
Yeah, before we bump up against a report.
Right.
Claire, did you say you found the standards for NAEP?
No,
Okay.
I did not find a standard.
I guess,
They're
yeah.
not standards,
I don't think they're
assessment.
standards.
No, they're assessment.
Yeah.
But they did write a set of standards. I do know that because the NAEP standards were part of the documents that I know Betsy used.
For NGSS?
Mm-hmm. There's a set of standards somewhere.
I could try to find them
Google
tonight.
up there, just Google up there in the search, put standards.
I did. You mean in Google? Yeah, I did. I put in NAEP standards, and this is the one that came up.
I have it online.
There's just a lot here, so I might just be missing it.
NAEP frameworks.
Oh, frameworks? Where do you?
I Googled NAEP science content standards. And you get NAEP frameworks.
Okay, NAEP science content.
For 2009.
Okay,
Third one down, Mike.
thank you.
So I prefer I actually read the board.
Chris, can you share that?
What?
The placematting thing.
Oh, okay, so the question was asking me about the 75 standards and what the cap on that is. And so I talked with Representative Vargas now, and I had a call in also to House Counsel, and when he wrote the bill, that was the question. And so the understanding was that, I guess we're calling this the placemat. So there's 64 standards on here. So the law says that you go up to no more than 75 of these. What we're talking about here are really the substandards or the tools in which enable you to reach these standards.
Right.
So you can do as many of these, whatever you want to call them, as you want.
Can I show how that works? Do you have the old CLEs and GLEs? Maybe. Oh, might be. See, what he's talking about on here on the placemat under science, it says one of what we call, those of us who are educational professionals and we know this, we call these strands. And so strand 1 is properties and principles of matter and energy. You pull up a 6 through 8, and here's the first strand, properties and principles of matter and energy. And these are the things that we expected them to know within properties and principles. So, yeah, so no more than 75 of these, but there's going to be more information within those, because that's when we start getting specific.
So this looks very similar to had the one thing put up there, the gray bars.
Right.
Now there were only, how many of those, it was not the exact same number, but what is different? Yeah.
Yeah, I think they had fewer than we had.
Right. Yeah, so do they just have one there for part and, they just combine a couple or something?
Yeah, I think that's what I think, because they had like life sciences and had like 4 or 5 of different life science and we had, so, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, I just wanted to make sure.
I was just trying to answer someone else's question.
I think I found I drilled down as far as I could, and it looks like, I'll try again tonight just to make sure I'm not missing. This is life science. It looks like a very broad, it looks like the placemat. It's not a bad thing to look at, but it's not standard. It's very, it's topics, I guess. Unless I'm missing something. Do you see something else?
I mean, it's very broad, and the other thing though is you'll notice, I mean, I'm in a little slightly different area, but they talk about cross-cutting concepts and practices.
I might have been, were you right here?
And we're using those 2 terms.
Yeah,
okay.
well, I was,
Right, they're not the same.
I'm just totally on.
We need to decide whether these are.
No, that's where I'm looking.
That's the old expectation.
That's the old one?
Yeah, they're talking about the 2009 standards when they're not.
Yeah, but they said 2009.
That's 2009.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It says, oh, where does it say 2000?
Comparison. Oh, so look at the second column.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But they have a lot of the same similar things as in DSS, which is, like I said, it was a document.
So what was that?
I was just saying, Kimberly and I were just talking, these are what, as of right now, these are what the state is calling standards. We've been calling these standards because they're the next generation science standards. When under how we currently have everything set up, these are the standards and these would be what we call expectations underneath the standards.
And was that what the GLEs were too?
Yes.
Yeah, you're right,
Yes.
grade level expectations, yeah.
Yeah, grade level expectations.
Yeah.
So we're using this idea of standards and saying that these are the same thing as next generation science standards, but these are not. These show me standards are the broad.
And what's our charge?
To define the
What's our charge? The substandards, okay.
Whatever you want to call it.
Expectations. Okay,
Now,
expectations.
I'm looking at the language of the bill says standards, and
We can do that in about 10 minutes.
So basically,
So we did have a big job. I mean, the bill, as Shelley just said, the bill does say standards. So we need to decide whether we like these standards or we want new standards. But then with these standards, we're going to have to come up with the expectations as well.
And there's really nothing wrong with those, they just don't say anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they might as well just say 1, 2, 3, 4.
Right. Science.
I think most of the argument, no matter who you've been, has been the expectations are not what we want them to be. Not that the state show me standards were bad, but the expectations were not good. And so that the language of them saying standards, I think they really need expectations. That's my interpretation.
I'm a planner, so as we're talking, I'm like, building my timeline here, or my outline of, okay, so we need to go through the standards themselves and really have those concrete, go one by one. We have to reword them, combine them, whatever we need to do to create the standards. Once we get done with creating the standards, then we need to define the standards and build the expectations on them. That's kind of my mental outline. Am I correct on this?
Good.
Okay, so if the placemat is basically our standards, then the first step that we need to do is have the standards, figure out exactly out of those what we have to reword, add to, remove, etc., to get our base. Yeah, to keep our, or to have our base standards before we go forward with anything else. Because from there, then we need to figure out, okay, these are our standards. Now let's define those standards. So what subheadings are we going to have under each state? And then the expectations.
So you're wanting to change the
No, she's just bringing, it's technically an option that we have if we want to. I don't know that we need to, but
It would
we
be
could.
nice if the strands that we're going to have on our, I mean, if these, there's 8 things are listed under science, we ought to be able to take number 1 and say, okay, strand 1 is going to be that, you know?
Well, changing the strands is, yes, I can
matter of
understand
energy,
that.
which is already one of the strands, but just make them match each, you know?
Yes, I understand that. I'm looking at not this side. I'm looking at the process standards, and I'm like,
Oh, no, I'm like,
Oh,
under
no,
science.
Right.
yeah, no, under science, if you want to change the each strand names to line everything up,
So,
Or we
It'd
could
make our lives easier.
we could keep them the same, we could change them to match something that better aligns, I mean, but, yeah,
I'm
we
just
still.
looking at that as at least a starting point, so that then we have a plan.
we can do that in 10 minutes, we can finish that today.
And then it's over here 30, right? Oh, I'm sorry.
So how many strands are there in say
Like the main things?
Sure, I have my own personal copy.
15.
Is that
16.
16?
I think each one has 5, and then engineering has 1.
what was the thing that had?
The
like,
5 topics.
Had matter and energy and.
Yeah, what if those were the
motion,
strands?
those.
Like on middle school, there was actually 6 because of the engineering at the bottom.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
that
what if
there
those were the strands?
That's what I'm, yeah.
Are they the exact same for middle school and high school?
They were pretty
I think
close.
so.
That's
You
what-
pull
so
out
we
the
could-
edge.
we could-
One was different.
Okay.
Like science.
You're right. You're right, there was a little different.
One.
I think you should just get back.
Yeah.
And not to beat a dead horse, but this is where we're gonna really need to make sure that we are in contact with
Yeah.
the rest of the.
Elementary.
And the elementary science.
Yeah. How many did you say?
There's 12.
12?
Well, physical science has 4 listed
Oh,
underneath.
I see, you're right.
Life science has 4, and then earth science has 3, and engineering has the 1.
Okay, you're right.
And this is the thing that said we could have up to 7 of them. But that's
Well,
total.
that's all,
But that's total.
you can't have 75 science.
You said there's 16.
You gotta share.
And to do 75 science, the rest of it falls in place.
In its natural order, right?
That's right.
So, and again, we're gonna have to refer
You
back
know,
to
I was thinking if you say.
the one caution that I would state is I would think I'd have to invite someone from the department to be present and say to you that you can't touch anything on that blue sheet. That's not what we're doing. We're dealing with the next level, the explanations.
right?
Yeah, that being changed, not those. And that's, all of that was part of the presentation, which you didn't see.
Can I interrupt? I'm sorry. There's no polite way to do this. Todd Scott, my name. I'm Chief of Staff General Counsel to Senator Tom Dempsey, the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and Brian Buckner worked for the Senate Governor, Josh Foster with Senator Ed Henry, who was the handler of House Bill 1490 County Court. And sorry we didn't catch you on a break, and I apologize for the interruption, but just wanted to say a couple things. Thank you, first of all, for coming. It's a big trip. You're probably all over, and there was a little oversight on our part where lodging and meals and mileage, as you're painfully aware, was not reimbursed in the bill. We hope to remedy that when we reconvene in January. But thank you for coming, not only donating your time, but at this point, donating your nickel as well. I did want to just say thanks and also to encourage you. You know, this was a bill we pushed through the legislature to address a pretty controversial subject that lots of people from across the state have strong opinions on one way or the other. I think it cuts across party lines even, but it stirs up strong passions. And so the job ahead of you is pretty monumental. And unfortunately, we don't really have a plan B if we don't get recommendations. You know, the difficult to come up with, and if you all don't find a way to do it, my guess, not necessarily my hope, but my guess is that the department will do what they want. They'll write their own. You have them here under the statute to come up with recommendations, and but failing to do that, I don't know what would fill in that void. So thank you again for trying to work on these thorny issues and come to some consensus. Arguably, the dirty little secret is we kick these things over to citizens, but the legislature can't agree. So we kind of own the ball. But we do thank you for doing it. Hopefully you can come up with something good. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to contact our office. Sort of after you're convened, it's your baby, so you get to do with it as you want. But if you want input, please don't hesitate to contact us. Brian, Lieutenant Governor's office, has a couple words you'd like to add?
Yeah, what the Lieutenant Governor wanted me to convey to you is that you know, after this meeting is convened, you now take ownership of the product, the recommendations. It operates independently of anyone, our office, any of these offices, any other entity. It's you, and that was the intent of the bill, was to bring teachers, parents, and citizens together to come up with these standards. And that's kind of where our power stops, is putting people on this group. I think we had one person that dropped out from our office. I think that is still going to be on your group later on. But if we can be a resource as best we can, we will not try to influence anything that goes on here, but we will try to give you an answer if you have a question. Thank you.
I'm going to leave a business card. You look like the person at the, sort of hard to tell on a rectangular table who's at the head, but I'm assuming this is you.
We're all equal here. There's
Yes,
no head.
that's right. That's why that's a big square.
Although maybe we were just discussing this. We were discussing the idea of the standards, and Lynn just said that these were untouchable. Is that true?
So,
or
previous
is this
panel,
possible?
Well, previous panel asked a similar question, and so you're catching us a little bit on the fly. So I'm going to sit down and ponder this one time, but we can kind of reiterate what we told them. In terms of legislative intent, which isn't necessarily binding, but it's probably a decent guide at this point. As we all know, we got here because Common Core was very controversial. Some love it, some hate it. The bill was designed to give teachers and citizens an opportunity to rewrite that, if they so choose. I would just say, as a rule of thumb, if it currently is what you would call Common Core, that you would have, it would be within your purview to examine and potentially rewrite that. I think this is kind of the overview, and there's a much more specific set of documents that talk about more specific terms. You know, the statute speaks in terms of standards. I don't know, Josh was more involved in the drafting of the bill, but I would go big rather than small, because if you give the department back a recommendation that's very general or very narrow and specific, you know, then they don't have much to work on.
Well, the discussion was happening because it says no more than 75 standards. I'm a professional. I'm a teacher. So these are the standards of what we've looked at before. That's what we call the expectations. So there's a difference. Are we changing expectations? Are we changing standards?
Well, yeah. I mean, we can get bogged down in the words.
Right.
And I totally understand words can be
right.
used in the court of law. You know, it could possibly.
And it's going to be something different for me than it would be for Kim as a parent versus a teacher.
You're doing science standards, correct? You're science
correct.
standards, so you don't really fall into the whole Common Core state standards at this point, because that's English language arts and mathematics. But my understanding of the way it works is the Common Core state standards fall into the expectations.
Okay.
And that was what the bill was looking to address overall, and each subject area would fall under that same level. So my understanding and the intent of the legislature was for you to create those expectations. Like that's where Common Core falls.
So these should stay the same then?
That's my basic understanding.
So when the bill says no more than 75 standards, that's elementary and
well, and that's actually current statute. So
my understanding is there were no more than 75 already.
No more than 75 Ds.
These, but not expectations.
Sure.
So the bill says we're supposed to develop no more than 75 Ds, but we're not supposed to touch this. So we're somewhat confused.
I guess the bigger question we have is we look to adopt the expectations, we'll call them.
Right.
If we want to make them properly aligned with the standards, could we change the standards so that they fall neatly into categories, or do we need to leave the standards, or are we required to leave the standards alone? And we just have to work
Can I
underneath
just offer
that.
you this? At the end of the day, what your product out of here is a recommendation. I mean, it's not as though you're actually, what you say will be written in stone. It is a recommendation to the Board of Education. If you go too far afield and they feel, well, you went beyond what the statute said, the worst that's going to happen is they will not, they will disregard that. Now, granted, there's some time wasted. I'm happy to try to help parse this down more narrowly to avoid that, but I guess my just general thought would be, as time permits, be more broad than more narrow, because you have a better chance of sharing your views with the department if you're more specific. Now, in terms of actually parsing it, and you probably need to give more thought to this sort of off-the-cuff answer, I can be reached. I ran out of cards, but I gave you one of my bosses. And what we cast out or threw out to another panel was, maybe there's a way, if you want to send us a very specific question, and you probably have heard it twice now, we probably know some of the parameters, it might be worthwhile for the Department of Education, Senate research, House research, kind of all of us to sit down, and if we can come to a consensus just legally and give you some sort of guidance where it's not the department's guidance or it's the Senate's guidance, it's sort of a consensus guidance, then maybe that would be helpful, and I'm happy to work on that if that's enlightening for us. And if you have other questions, feel free to shoot us an email or give us a holler. But like Brian says, we're not empowered to tell you what to do, if we can serve as offer any guidance, that's something we can try to help out with. Clear as mud? Well, thank you all for your time. Thanks for serving. Let us know if there are other questions.
What I just honestly
So we can suggest a change. It looks like we're really doing expectations.
So once again, legislation doesn't say what it is, but it means what it doesn't say.
If we see a problem, at least make a recommendation, they don't have to take it.
If it's not utility light.
Right.
Who are we making the recommendations to?
It sounded like Board of Ed.
No, Board of Education.
Board of Education.
Our recommendation will go in front of the State Board of Education.
So you said there are 16?
I think she said 12.
12? There's 8 here. I have it says no more than 75 per brand. So I mean,
But you don't know what others are doing.
Let's clarify it this way. These things are safe. Let's leave that alone. These are knowledge and performance standards. If you look at the House bill says that it's performance standards or learning standards. So what we're looking at is learning standards. So if we're going to use the terminology, let's leave it in learning standards. So instead of looking at expectations or general standards, the performance standards are on the placement. The learning standards are what you will be looking at changing by recommending national standards there or whatever standards the group can come up with.
so we're not going to live that kind of line for this. We're just going to.
They will be, because those are our overriding concepts.
We have to align what we do to that, not
But,
that.
but I'm saying is our group 1 is not going to be group 1 on
So we
here.
only have 75 expectations.
What is Group
So
1?
it's not going to align, that's what I'm saying.
It will, because all you got to do is just say that if we choose to have chemical reactions as a topic, chemical reaction falls under the properties and principles of matter and
I
energy.
think we're defining a line differently.
Yeah.
To me, number 1 is number 1, that's a line.
Yeah.
So
It's not gonna be
we're just defining it differently.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
If it helps any, the teachers don't use that to teach. They use the expectations. Yeah.
But we gotta have all different conversations.
Right, yeah.
As far as we're concerned, these are just topics.
Yeah.
And we already know we're covering all those, so we can ignore this.
Right.
Okay.
No.
Stephen's still really young.
1993.
Well, mine was later than that because I've only been teaching.
When was it?
96, I think, or something like that.
Well, but they were doing reviews. I remember us
Yeah.
doing reviews on these,
Oh, yeah.
sitting in meetings for hours, arguing
That's
over
when it
wording.
came out.
So it sounds like, did you say we're gonna get one more person? Is that what you said?
Sound like it.
Should we come to a consensus on how we want to?
So we have our documents,
Reach
right?
on, I mean, what we want to do as far as whether we want to do, majority rule or consensus or, I mean, so that as we move forward, we'll know what constitutes decision.
I think it's a good idea. I think it's a good idea.
Establish our norms.
Well, I mean, normally you would, I mean, if you want to get, if we're in a situation where we're taking a vote, which means we don't have consensus, and we, at that point, I guess, run by Robert's Rules of Order, and we can decide do you need a 2/3 vote or a simple majority vote would be the standard method by which we would do it. I mean, unless we decide otherwise, the standing rule of any board or committee is to use Robert's Rules of Order. Within that context, you got simple majority or 2/3.
I think 2/3 would be better. I think if it's simple majority, then that means we're in as much conflict as.
Yeah, there could just be one person.
Oh yeah, let's not do that again.
I was gonna say simple majority too, because this is also such a small.
So wait, simple majority or
No,
2/3?
I was 2/3.
Okay.
Simple majority means we can have 7 over 6, and it's not very good.
Okay, so do we have, so let me ask you this question. Do we have consensus for using Robert's Rules of Order? And do we have consensus that anything that we feel we need to vote on, that we don't have consensus on, would require a 2/3 vote?
I make a motion to accept.
I'll second
You don't have
that.
anyone to receive the motion.
We don't have a
You don't have a chair yet, but.
This is true. But
And
I like
I
it.
nominate Chris Howard, we should.
Oh, stop.
I'd second that motion.
Well, he already started with the Roberts.
I was just trying to.
So moved.
We
We
heard a
heard a second.
A second?
Which one? Wait. Which one are we
All in
seconding?
Chris being chair.
All in favor of Chris being chair?
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I abstain, as would be proper.
All right.
All right, well then the second order of business, we need to have what, vice chair or something, right?
Yeah, we need a second person. It's
All right.
2 people.
Anybody want?
It would be nice if we had a lady. Pat, that's my bias.
Are you a parent?
Yes.
Jordan's a parent?
So we should have an educator
So then
lady.
maybe Clara?
Clara wins.
I nominate Clara.
Second.
It's been seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wow. This is a lot coming from Friday.
Hey, I guess beat Aller yesterday.
Oh, okay, you do have a meeting. All right.
Yes, sir.
Great, Chris, I look forward to working with you.
All right, wait a minute. So what? I'm catching up now. You know, this happened to me one other time, and the person who did that to me, he paid for 10 years.
But doesn't mean it was bad. Payback was bad.
No, it doesn't. It was good. He's my best friend. He nominated me once for something when we agreed to nominate somebody else. Caught me completely off guard. Okay, so no, that was the incident. All right, so I guess we voted on the chair and vice chair, but we didn't take up whether or not we were agreed we were going to use Robert's Rules of Order and a 2/3 vote. And my attitude is generally to find consensus wherever possible. So I hope everyone will support that and come up with an alternative plan.
I think that's what I wrote, that you would try to operate by consensus, but if it came to be that you didn't reach consensus, 2/3 vote.
Well, I said it, but nobody voted on it.
I
Or
say
nobody
aye.
said yes. I guess I'm looking for consensus from everybody. That's how we want to do things. It's not up to me.
Yeah, okay.
So
All
I'll
in
make a
favor of
motion
that?
that we follow Robert's Rules of Order with the consensus being the decision-making policy unless it can't be obtained in 2/3 vote.
Second.
No, good point.
I know additional people may be joining up to 17. Yes. All kinds of things.
Well, I mean, they're taking notes,
She's
right?
taking notes.
So we don't have to have a separate secretary.
No.
Everybody cool?
I
Unless.
was gonna say, are you gonna be here
Unless
all
you-
each?
Right, so,
Yeah.
no, what I know is we have to set what we did, we set those meeting times set up, so if you change it, I probably won't be at those meetings.
What I read in one of them is that there's a recorder, but then it's either one of you two, or assigned, I guess, takes her notes and makes a update letter or something. That's what
Yeah,
I read
there has to be an
somewhere.
updated letter.
Right, but that
Progress
has to come
report.
from an appointed person. So you take her notes and then you make your own something, newsletter.
If we have a meeting that she's not at, then we'll
Yeah.
have to get together.
There was supposed to be two recorders.
One was a recorder and the other one's a PDF.
Oh, okay.
Now
All right.
the two recorder.
If we follow Robert's rules, if we pick a different meeting date that works better for other people and she can't be here, then Robert's rules of order says the chair gets to appoint. We'll do it by consensus, even, I don't care. Which, somebody remind me, when is the next meeting date?
Tomorrow.
I mean.
Second and third.
And those are Monday, Tuesdays?
Second, third is a Thursday, Friday.
Oh, that's better for me.
Can we, are those dates next dates set in stone, or can we change?
We can, legally, we do anything we want. Now, if we change the dates, I mean, and I don't care, I'm fine with it, but if we change the dates, then we lose the resource, potentially lose the resource with the DESI facilitators, whether we need them to help facilitate, or whether it's a resource position, because now that if we have leadership now, we facilitate the meeting by Robert's Rules of Order, but there are a resource. I mean, they're going to give us information that we may not get on our own.
Do we have the ability to reserve the room and get technical hookup and all that stuff on our own?
If we alter meeting dates, then yeah. And unless someone has a preference, just because I can, I would just get us a room over in the Capitol building, because all I have to do is make a phone call and I'll give it to you. And then we can hook up whatever we need to. There's Wi-Fi in the house, in the house, Capitol building, I should say. But that's, if we want to talk about that now, the next date is the 2nd and 3rd. I haven't even looked at my calendar that far out, but we can decide. I mean, if you guys want to stick with that, you want to change it, if we change it.
We can stick with that one, looking at the one later.
What's
I
this?
need them all stuck with.
We'll have many more meetings after that, so.
Yeah, we're not gonna get this all figured out by the end of October.
I don't know when these meetings are.
The next one is at the same times, but October 2nd and 3rd. And then the next one, same times, 20th and 21st, is that right?
When you say same time, is the first day later than
Yeah.
the second?
Yeah.
Okay.
The second day comes at 3, so.
Because tomorrow's 8 o'clock to 3.
Yeah, it's 9 to 4 and 8 to 3.
Yeah, I didn't know there was a change.
Oh, okay.
It's a little bit of a problem.
If you're from out of town, I actually, the hotel that I stay at, staying at, it only has seats. So I have a second bed if somebody will need someplace to stay. It's the Comfort Inn, or Comfort Suite.
I just need people to show much children. Okay. Okay, so October 2 and 3, October 20 and 21.
Are you going to be here for sure on the 21st?
Current plan.
Okay. Well, I may have to leave early, which means you'll be in charge. Just, do communication and all.
Okay.
Okay, so we're fine with leaving the dates as they are. Am I hearing that correct with everybody?
I guess from after that, then it'll be up to us to pick, our
And
own.
we pick our own dates and we'll pick our own facilities, and Desi can help us, or I'll get help out of the house, or whatever we need, we'll find a way to 2nd, 3rd, 20th, and 21st. Everybody's fine with those next set of dates. So we're all good. Yes? So now I'm short without a plan. I didn't think I was going to do that.
Well, I think we need to take a break. And
That sounds great.
And you can figure out the next hour worth of agenda.
All right. It's almost 4:45. Be back in the room by 3 o'clock. I didn't even bring it up.
No, they are. No, you know, I think they do.